the spaceship this conference has been made only on the Korean system. So it was I will start by looking at the heterogeneity, where we are having something in a different way. And kind of the next slide is next slide. So I mean these are microbiology, heterogeneity, post-heterogeneity, population, spatial, and temporal. Let's start. I don't know. Once we are ready to start, we stop, and then as God help us continue another time. If you have to follow, I'm going to take it slow and steady so that can have the background as much as you want to take this kind of thing forward after now. Now, heterogeneity, we find out that individuals are members of classes that differ systematically in the frequency or infectiousness of their contacts and in the distribution of their contacts with the other groups, as well as their risk of severe outcomes if infected. So why does that matter? How do we account for it in models? I was saying initially that most of the models that I had, including the one that Ritzy and Cage was doing, they were homogeneous systems. Now, where we are only classifying everyone to be the same. But in reality, it's not always like that. And that is why, that is what brings in the feature of three things that determines how a model should look like, which is accuracy, transparency, and flexibility. Now, if a model is going to be very realistic, it has to go beyond transparency or being flexible. It has to begin to be more complex. We have to add some complexity. And in adding the complexity, we begin to consider what we are talking about. So individual members of classes that differ systematically in the frequency of their contacts. And then, or their infectiousness of their contacts. Now, I can start with, you know, you have SIR, this is the basic stuff that you have, SIR, right? Now, if I want to introduce heterogeneity, I can have many classes of heterogeneity. This is one form of heterogeneity. There are different forms of heterogeneity. I can have different forms of SIR. S1, S2, S3, and then this is population heterogeneity because I'm looking at the each of the population, and then I say I1 of packets, I1, I2, I3, and then I have R1, R2, R3. Now, what have I have decided to create more classes in the society because I'm seeing that I'm seeing the need that society may not only be just a single class in that particular disease. Now, what determines the structure of a model are different forms. Now, one of it is the pathogen. The pathogen dynamics. The dynamics of the pathogen determines the structure of the model. Now, if the model is going to follow a particular structure, the pathogen will play the host, play the host in terms of either the intermediate host or we move those to the vector, depending on the kind of disease you are looking at. So you can determine the kind of structure the model will have. And then other factors can also play in terms of maybe some exogenous factors like environmental, environmental factors, and then social factors can also be to determine the structure of the model as regards the dynamics of that. So now, when you look at the contacts, contacts for a disease to happen, there must be contacts. The contacts can be successful and may not be successful. So, but there must be a contact for a disease to happen. Now, and then the interest of mathematicians is on the contact, not about the statistics talk about the contacts. The statistics talk about the patterns, variables, and all of that. The patterns, and then how each of those variables, how they relate to each other, or how they associate. So, but the mathematics talk about the contact, and that's when we talk about the transmission dynamics. So, most of the models that are doing modeling actually transmission dynamics, and that's why mathematics play a very strong role. But in that transmission dynamics, every transmission is a function of some contacts. Now, the contacts happens, and then individuals are members of classes that differ systematically in the frequency of their contacts. Now, their contacts can change. A lot of things can affect the contact. In fact, most of the time, when I look at, take for instance, if I look at the force of infection, what's the force of infection? The force of infection is the rate of acquisition of an infection, right? So, and then if you look at one important thing about force of infection is the beta high, right? The beta high, the beta here is the transmission parameter, right? So the transmission parameter is a function of three basic things, which is the epidemiological factors, environmental factors, and then sociological factors. As most times, you may not easily be able to fit this kind of parameter with an ordinarily observed pattern, or you think that may be very, very impossible, because it's a function of many variables when it comes to this. So when you look at that, you find out that this beta can actually this beta transmission parameter can be forced to have different kind of contacts that introduce in the material, that the contacts can be different form, because this is influenced by the technology, factor, and influenced by environmental factors. When I think environmental, you know what I mean by the climates and land use change, and then all of that. So, and then social factors like demography and demography. And then, and in the distribution of their contacts with the other groups. Now, and then, as well as the risk of severe outcomes being prevented. So why does that matter? And how do we account for all of these models? Okay, so you find out that severity now here is being seen as a function, as a function of age. Now, there are certain diseases that they are actually, if you understand, they are the average age of infection. Like, to know the average age of infection, it can make you to know what age brackets are at risk, most risk of infection. Take for instance malaria, and then there are certain diseases called childhood disease. Why do we call them childhood disease? The reason why we call them childhood disease is because the age class that disease usually almost their child age, maybe less than 5 years and all that. Right? So now we are saying that severity can be a function of age. That means a disease can be formed much more severe or complicated due to age. Now, when you are young, there are certain diseases that a young person, maybe like less than 5 years, that is easily prone to. Easily prone to. And then as you grow in age, you begin to have some level of what I call in the physics of things, shock absorber. Now, you know what I mean by shock absorber. Now, some of them are not, when I mean shock absorber, I mean immunity. Immunity may be lifelong, they may be temporary. Especially when it comes to some childhood disease, you find out that their immunity is lifelong. And then other ones do not have lifelong immunity, where your immunity may wane after some time. And then another thing that immunity is a very because we talk about immunity. It can be affected or influenced by so many factors. Genetics are made. Now some people may certain immunities to disease generally. Why some people may not be able to build because of their gene, their genetics does not support their antibodies. So you find out that genetics can also run because your antibodies that can rise up against a particular disease to be released. So you find out that also malnutrition. Now, nutritional status is very important. Now, if your nutritional status is very bad, you know, like that also like your immunity will be downplayed. You know? So now, and that was why most times when there is a disease, whether the disease is novel or not novel, you know, like COVID-19 was a novel virus. The pathogen was novel because there are not any kind of that pathogen before. The question is, can we find vaccination or treatment? Because some people are saying, oh, why not let's depend on immunity? We cannot depend on immunity because immunity is also an endogenous. Like all of you can see that you can be born of the same parent and you don't have the same level of immunity. So now, how do we get immunity? How do we get immunity? We can get immunity through vaccine. Vaccine induced immunity. So that's why government said, the policy maker said, let's go for vaccine use. Because if you say you want to depend on natural immunity, well, they leave the population their own and there have to be a lot of mortality. So they have to go for a use. So you find out that certain diseases become more severe. There are severe cases of disease as a function of age, due to age. Now, there are certain diseases that, you know, like when you are at certain age, that you know, we're talking about female genital dystonia. If it's not, if dystonia is then treated at certain age, then when the person able to evolve with another age, you know, you find out that the case becomes very severe and complicated when it's not taken care of as an. So there's big for to look at the aspect of age factor and can see some of the disease we do that here once, and then this is a case of productivity age scale yes, and then the percentage the cases for different diseases like diphtheria, pathogens, puff, and then measles and mumps. You find out that this is more or less like a cross-sectional data because the evolution is with age and not with time. But you look at this space that as you go on there, from this stage, look at page 1 for diphtheria, and at page 3, you see it's on the hospital, so you are having not more than 10 cases. But as the age goes down, you find out that as people age, people see that it's depleted. But for some other disease, you also find very low, and then at certain age, when they are very low. So most of the disease here, you find out that they are affecting parasite of people influence how many contact they have and with whom. Now, take for instance for HIV, like somebody who have like they have girlfriends, almost all states Nigeria. So your character and also determine, say that set of individual influence how many contacts they have. Now, if you are a womanizer, it means that you are prone to all sexual diseases, sexual transmitted disease, the opportunity for it to be infected very high. And also, like there was a case of a lady from years back. So some of you that used to go to mountains, go to mountains or you go to our park to go and pray, and then because of the husband is not there, and a lot of people are praying and they are different kinds of they are doing different things. And because God, what happened? People in the course of their praying, either with their power after they impregnate or sleep with all those women. And none of them got an HIV. But if you don't know which of their fast or pastor that slept, and then brought the HIV back to their family, the husband had time with his wife, and then what happened? The husband convert the HIV from the wife. Eventually, the two of them died, and they left their children as orphans. So that was simply years past when there were no much HIV treatments available in the country. So now what we are saying is that the kind of contacts we pick, can influence your level of infectiousness. So there are sites of individuals influence how many contacts they have and with whom. So this affects both their likelihood of getting infected and their likelihood of passing on infection. So you see now, if you have contact with low risk people or high risk people, you are going to come to that. So how do you differentiate that the low risk and the high risk population? So these are things we need to look at, in terms of looking at heterogeneity in disease. Yes. Yes, sir. Now, so age and transition opportunities. Take care. I would have gone to use the Nigerian sort of data. I need to get the job when I get there. So like children like this. So the first case of was this smallpox town in 1978. Some children were in school because after the open of school, every year, like January, people have gone to different places. Some people went to Lagos, some goes to Sokoto, different places. They came together. If you go to school, if you really want to carry out the research on children, when it comes to certain things, you go to school where they just in and do a kind of survey. Find out it's testing, we find out that there will be certain people have come with certain things or the other, and they will be spread. My children speak in a prayer at a certain time, they resume, and then there was authenticated. I was authenticating, and then people were having, as it was finished from, children were protecting this children. And how many of you we have seen that somebody come to put hand on your nose? What children can do like this and say, touch you, and he puts their hand in the bubble and touch somebody's nose. You understand? They don't see that anything. So the contact things is very high. They can see somebody can pick the person's water and drink, and then can do a lot of things. While he's eating, he collect bread, he put the bread in his mouth, and then because and then the bread, he put it in the mouth again. No, but look at all of it now. Contact rate is not, if you look at the way that together, they are sitting there because of this and go on. So age and transmission opportunity. So the two of them move together. Age and transmission, there are things we need to look at. 3 forms of heterogeneity generally. Now, some individuals are more infectious, or some are more likely to get infected. But these are uncorrelated. Because you cannot really measure it. It's random. So random heterogeneity usually cause biology or site of infection. So more infections like SARS, super spreaders, tuberculosis. Now, if somebody has tuberculosis there now, and just for why, and just you know what we have. So you have to We get it. So it may not occur immediately. Maybe 10, 16 years. And you start seeing, so more likely to be infected, immunocompromised. Now, if you have some underlying disease, you can take it very fast. You're having some heart issues, some maybe diabetes and all of that, very, very fast because the immune system is already down. So, and that is why for such people, you have to be very careful. Now, number two is some individuals are more likely to get infected, and those same individuals are more likely to pass on infection. So, if they are infected, no random heterogeneity, usually behavioral source. And this one has to do it. It's not concerning, it's not normal, it's regular, like sex workers. Sex workers. People who are involved in sex business, they are low, they have customers every night, and then people are coming to pick them easily. They are now split up organization. Now, not only HIV, many of us talk about HIV, there are other more dangerous STIs, sexually transmitted infections like gonorrhea, that does not give up. You continue the living all your life. Most of them are taking the SIS campaign. So you can always select, even after getting. And then some of them, they very difficult to keep. So now children also, like respiratory influenzas. That's why you cannot always recover fully from influenza. You know what I mean by influenza? Influenza. It comes and goes. And then in every season, you have different ones. The strain that comes here may not be the strain that will come another year. So that's why people take jabs every now and then to be able to stay safe for influenza. Because the strains always deeper. Now, don't stay patient in the hospital and have no man because you don't know where it's going to come. Somebody can come to the hospital with another disease that you didn't come with to treat, and you get your own package there. And then some strains of infection are more infectious than others. Now, that's the truth. The one I just said now, like, if you have a stronger strain, then you know what it means. So, pathology biology, toxin producing this bacteria, enteric bacteria, drug sensitive and drug resistant strains, different antigen types. If you have a particular strain A, and then you were treating strain A, strain B, it's not like doing folk. People were getting different strains and you need to get another vaccine to be able to take care because it's viral disease. It's always tending to more of what we call now the initially mutates. When you talk about virus, it mutates very fast. Now, heterogeneity generally, in the basic SR model, we have assumed that the population is homogeneous. That is, everyone is considered to be identical, except for the status. So, and to have random contacts. So the contacts are not specific. Now, so in this case, you are having a random homogeneity. And then the next thing is, in general, the system contains many heterogeneity, such as you have host heterogeneity, you have population heterogeneity, you have spatial heterogeneity, you have temporal heterogeneity, which is happened to me because when you be systematic from the first attempt of the year. So you have heterogeneity. The standard models introduce compartmentalize the population only in terms of infection status. And is classifying individuals as susceptible, infected, or recovered, and modeling the number of individuals in this compartment. Now, all the models you have looked at so far, they are only on microparasitic disease. And for microparasitic, the interest is to model infection status. Microparasitic disease are what are those pathogens? Microbial pathogens and microparasitic disease are they are virus, they are parasites, and some protozoa. their fungi, what are you mentioned other ones? Bacteria, microplastics. Now, what we focus on those kind of discipline and model to look at the textual status and model. So that's why all the models we have been doing Monday, they are all microplastics. Now, when you move into macro, it's not going to be this form. So, but I'm not talking about that now. So for macro, we are looking at, we are modeling the body. And that's when we talk about the elites. We talk about schistosomes, talk about glaciers and all of that. So, but for this, say as such, there is only 1 degree of subdivision within this population. That's the potentials. So in this course, we introduce a 2nd degree model dividing the population into classes with similar behavioral characteristics. So these characteristics choosing such that all members of class have comparable risk of both contracting and transmitting. Professor Mohammed Party is here. Now, two clear motivating examples dominate the indicator of models dealing with risk. Number 1 is age structure for childhood infection. Age structure. Now, most of the diseases that are, especially things like protozoans, like malaria, you find out that someone was protecting something like that bathroom, working on malaria, and needed to look at classes age, different age, and then the adult and all, where you have to put people in different age groups. So, and then we have the restructure, which is meant for sexually transmitted infections, where you are looking at loans and IMC. And then models for STIs frequently subdivide the population to classes dependent upon the risk associated with behavior in this class. So, STIs, they are looking at the risk. So, high risk individuals, for example, have many sexual partners. Now, because we don't know which. Now, in that situation, when you have a boyfriend and you have many girlfriends, then you are a case of you may guess that you will contact entry 6 days, but you have a husband or a wife that has many other concubines outside. You may contact many diseases. You are at a very high risk. So, for example, so that high risk individuals have many sexual partners, or for some STIs, who partake in intravenous drug use, frequently sharing needles, and all that. So as a result, individuals in this class have a higher risk of both contracting and transmitting infection. So given the very clear link between the number of partners and the risk of infection and the heterogeneity between individuals, it seems legit to include such relations in models if we wish to understand and predict the patterns of sexually transmitted infection given the location or given the space. Now, although ignoring the behavioral heterogeneity when we ignore it, and assuming that everyone has the same number of partners, is appealing though. Now you can easily do your maths. You understand? There are certain models you do just to fulfill all righteousness for mathematics. Don't do them for mathematics. God has. You understand? Because if you put certain reactions into this, there are certain children you not be able to. So there are. I'll be talking about. Because of. So it's either you are going 2 ways, computational or analytical. And sometimes we want to go computational, analytical, and want to be very realistic with very difficult to go. Yes, because certain theorems that are already established may not actually be able to capture the dynamics of that systems. You know, that's why you see for biological systems is actually more complex than physical system. Physics. Let me tell you, as far as the mathematical physics is concerned, they have finished everything there. There are people who are doing when I see somebody who is doing geometrical theory, I don't have. The only thing that I give is the graph. You don't draw graph. But there are many. They have finished everything in mathematical physics. Finished. And why people are close. So, but people in Nigeria, because they just imported some books from abroad. What there was a time I was asking somebody that look now, we have never started using laptop in Nigeria. For some class, they are finished using laptop, they are using something there before they print. So what I'm saying is that now for biological system are more complex. That's if you what's it called? They are complex, much more complex than physical system. Now, some physical system, you can use a linear system to calculate them. And you get good alpha X. But for biological system, they are very, very complex. And so you may need to see. So when we say, when you ignore the bilateral heterogeneity and assume that everyone has the same number of patterns, it's appealing for simplicity. We show that such averaging can produce a very misleading result. Not that we have been doing this average, it's okay. We start with that. But we must have a compromise in terms of when we are talking about our limitation. We must discuss that all of what I have done, I didn't take care of the variance. I only took care of the way. You must be able to tell people, if you're a modern and you are not sincere, it's like a pharmacy that's not sincere. No, you are going to kill a lot of tests. Yeah. No. You just, I'm letting you. Yeah. That's a bit of my people. Oh my God.
If you are to, develop a model or to model such a population, will it also give you a misleading result? I don't know if you understand the question.
If I look to where we have
a system, for example, 1 man, 1 wife, like a Christian setting.
Because people in that setting, people are also married more than one. Yes or no? Yes. It's still a men of you don't know. So you have to, for you to student, you have to be more like understand now. If I'm looking at now, if I'm looking at there are certain things I can ignore when I'm looking. Yes, I can ignore every other thing. I cannot say that I'm looking at a model that looks at the set of people in mathematical conference. So what makes everybody the same is participants as a what? You understand? I'm looking, my model is to capture the dynamics of people that attended this conference as participants. So what is the intersection? Participant. I have ignored other benefits like age, like sex, like color, tribe, where they came from, career status, a lot of things I will know. Do you understand? So make my model simple. But real life is not as simple as that. You understand now? So you can start simple, but you must put that heterogeneity exists. Complex statements. Are you getting that? So now I'm going to finish from this slide. So for many infections such as measles, pox, chickenpox, a high basic pneumonia means that the average age at first infection is low. You understand that? The age that people get the infection, the minimum age is low. That's why the output is high. I know for most of these heterogeneous cells, when I'm factoring heterogeneity, what I see is that I know that it's low in the homogeneous. I was talking about this that the output that I'm getting as 3 homogeneous of the same kind of model, when I use an heterogeneous model, I'm not become very hard. So what happens that when the Arnold like the Arnold that was calculating but I was 3, become 18. Now what happened in that case? Because it now becomes more difficult for intervention to get it. Now I don't get from because all the intervention they are putting in the percentage of effectiveness will be seen very low. Because what is happening is that there are internal heterogeneity that is frustrating effectiveness of that information. So now, and therefore, they are most commonly encountered only childhood, like some of these ones that. So the modeling of this social childhood is also require further partitioning of the population this time in terms of age. Some of who are doing this, not just issues and saying, okay, SIR, no. Look further. People have done SIR, as repeated, look at it as SCSA, same cholera. And then STIs, the subdivisions are determined by number of contacts. Number of contacts. Number of contacts. How many contacts do we have? Now, for childhood disease contact, the subdivisions are due to the nature of contacts. Not number. For childhood disease, nature. What kind of contacts? Now, for STIs, number of contacts. Now, number of contacts you have. So we make whether high risk or low risk. And then, because some diseases are common in childhood, but we are in adults, those individuals who exposed to children are the greatest risk, like the caregivers. So now, due to their applications, children predominantly mix with other children, and therefore age act as a major determinant of risk. I'm going to stop here. I have 10 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'm now standing for question. Me, I already have some questions in my hand that I want to ask. So I will allow us to raise our hands so that you can join me. I'm already on the list since I'm not holding the mic. So now if you have a question, can I see your hand? Oh, good. If you don't have, then I will go ahead and take the slots. Okay. So I'm thinking number one already. So what number you are taking? You are number two, are you? Then you are number three, number four, number five, number six. Okay, so we'll be fast. My question is this. You just mentioned something very important about the issue of heterogeneity, which actually I saw recently. For instance, the recent paper we published on malaria in Kelly, when we're trying to assess the effects of LLI, we saw that the effects, what we're having is very large in terms of the effects of intervention. So, but I also know that a work that we are doing currently also, though that we have to consider outdoor biting mosquitoes, indoor biting mosquitoes, weighing of LLI. Then we started seeing that the effect that LLI promises to have is not as large in the first paper that was published. So now the thought is this. Now, modeling is supposed to be a part of the decision science. I'm supposed to tell public health guys what to prepare for. So in terms of, so now seeing that sometimes homogeneous models tends to overestimate, for instance, the effectiveness of certain intervention now. So how much of heterogeneity can we possibly capture, or to what extent of heterogeneity must we not go below in order to be able to at least give a range, a very good range, so that when people are planning, you will not say that, okay, this is what LLI can do. Well, then they now say, okay, let's put 80% of LLI because we have said we can avert this number of cases. But unfortunately, when we put that in, it's not giving us that. So how do we salvage that situation? See, and then if I still want to go with homogeneous model, how do we salvage that kind of situation?
So we want to you need to have more complex model. Now, complexity now is not is something we have to now judge in terms of the question. And there's no model that can answer all the questions in the world. So you have to, like what I said the other time, that if I want to model this complex now, I want to like reduce my constraint in terms of different relatives that are related within. I want to keep my eyes away from them and just look at the participant. You get what I'm saying? So everything I'm talking about in terms of the prediction of the result of the model will be based on my assumption. Because every model is limited by its assumption. So everything I want to discuss in terms of the implications, in terms of the result and all of that, will still be based back on my limitation. And you can see that. So already the limitation around the first model that is homogeneous. Are you getting it now? Now you put in some little heterogeneity, but not in terms of in terms of the maybe the LNI stuff, but in terms of LNI.
I'm even talking for science in terms of now even looking at the mosquitoes as after biting.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of the biting pattern,
Yes.
biting pattern. Yes. So that is in terms of biting pattern. You understand? Now, if I'm going to talk now, I'll be talking based on that assumption, not outside the assumption. So every policy that we make will be towards that assumption that you have created. Do you understand now? So you have to any implication you want to write about your result should be based on those limitations and assumptions you have put in your model. So that if anybody is saying, I want to use this model, he's already thinking that, oh, around domain of assumption that you put. So if I also said age structure, do you understand now? So maybe I've looked at 3 age groups. So I'll be saying that among these 3 age groups in 80%. So the model is already assumed and limited around that space. Do you understand now? So everything you'll be talking about will be around that, not outside the space.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Okay, next question.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that wonderful presentation. So, on the presentation about host and heterogeneity, which you talked about, and saying that considering infectious transfers, that is, infectiousness of individual will be different in terms of. So then, recalling back to our definition of reproduction of which are basic reproduction of which is also based on average quantities in terms of some of the parameters. So I remember I stumbled on one thing like that in one of my when they introduced a concept called individual reproduction numbers to say that it's not averaging the population based on the quantity they have. So I've been thinking around that and how we can really implement that if we are saying that we're not using basic reproduction because we are not host heterogeneity, that is infectiousness of individuals in that population differ. There are some people who are super spreads or more resilient. So I'm looking at how that framework will be implemented in the kind of models that we do, following heterogeneous models.
So I think what's important with production number has to do with the model structure. Now, because like when you are calculating your R0 is supposed to be in function of all the parameters in the model, right? All the parameters in your model. So if I have the human compartment and the mosquito compartment, and the only thing when if I calculate my R0, the only parameters I can see in my R0 are only on the mosquito, saying there's a R0. Do you understand me now? So your R0 will be biased. So now, R0 calculated for population-based model. You understand? It's average. Do you understand now? Just like even the population you are considering, I'm sorry, the model you are considering is also averaging in terms of everything is mean. There's no variance. And you get what I'm saying now? It's when you begin to put in heterogeneity, you are making it a bit more individual, sort of, to understand. Then you begin to change the structure of the harmony. So that's why I said the R0 for, if you look at the case when the R0 for an homogeneous model will be flexor. The R0 for an heterogeneous model.
Thank you, bro. Next question.
All right, sir. So maybe just a continuation of the last question before I add to the. Okay, so I was thinking every model has an assumption, and in a stable population, I'm using Christian population as an example. You know, if the majority, if we say that 90% of the population are Christians, that's the that they are obedient to the biblical teachings. That means even if Mr. A is not obedient, but by the time he meets Mr. C, which is obedient, Mr. A is a womanizer, and he meets Mr. C, which is a lady that is obedient to the doctrine, you know, there will be no effective contact. So I was thinking, of course, there won't, because that one will obey the Bible while he is not obeying. So in that situation, maybe you can throw more light.
Like, I don't understand your question there because, like, I mean, we are just talking about contact. We don't define the question. What is mean spreading? Who's spreading there?
Is the HIV.
Okay, is he talking about HIV?
No, I think the gist of it is that once you know you were talking about the fact that in HIV,
Yeah.
that transmission,
STI,
STI, it depends on the number of partners. So it's not the same situation where, for instance, if I'm modeling a community where maybe that kind of they don't have multiple partners, that can I still go homogeneous? So,
you see now, like already, like you are already define your bias in terms of defining a community. You understand? You have defined from the outset. So you are already saying that they are homogeneous. In terms of that, you know, like the homogeneity you are looking at there is in terms of religion. You are not looking at homogeneity in terms of age. In terms of heterogeneity, there are other things that can make them different. But you are looking at their belief. But now, when you talk about heterogeneity, their gender, male or female, can also influence the profession. There are other things behavior, their behavior, where they go, their nutritional status, what they eat. So they are drinking garden, then the other one is eating fruits, taking fruit, banana, and all those things. For you, so those are things that define you and make you different when it comes to immunity, immune status, right? So you understand what I'm saying now? So they are not looking at one part. So you can do that and you say that you are assuming a community of the same believer. So that is your reason for your potential system. But there are many other things that can play around that system that can influence the dynamics of that business.
All right, thank you, Prof. I think I have one more hand here. Okay, how many of you are left now? So, but you didn't raise your hand. You did, okay. Okay.
So thank you very much, Prof. I want to get more clarity about analytical and the competition. You said that if a model is maybe too much complex, it will be very difficult to go in the pathway of being analytical, and then we can go in the route of competition. Now let's now assume that we want to develop a model for policy making, and there are some times that we have to put in some assumption so that we'll be able to maybe go. We are going to put in some assumption to go analytical. So, but now, if you want to make a policy, and then we use assumption to bring out to raise some parameter, can we now neglect the analytical part and then do competition?
Yeah, okay. Like you see now, you have to.
Yes, for the sake of
understand your audience. Your audience. Now, if you are doing your master in mathematics department, you want to graduate in the MS class. So you will need to put in some mathematics. Do you understand? In your thesis. and still put in your quantitative techniques and all that. But your maths must show for us to give you, for me to award you, or for any, for the Department of Mathematics to award you MSc Mathematics. Do you understand? Now, you are not doing a project for WAP. Are you getting it now? You are doing a project for WAP. And the question you want to answer is the same thing like your math, your model that you have used math for. They don't need all those your mathematical guidance. All they need is, now there are two routes you can go in modeling. You can go quantitative, that's analytical. You use pure maths theory. The other one is quantitative, that you will not go through all those routes. Because the quantitative is to satisfy the policy-driven model. It's policy relevant model and with policy relevant question. Are you understand? So you are going through the other route, you have become quantitative because you want to quantify certain quantities or certain measures to be able to convince your policy data. So you go through the other route and all these big stability in the large or local or all those things, you may not involve yourself in that. Even though you have the max, but you may not put it in the work. Or for instance, I come here as a modeler, and all of you are public people. Now, I will not need to begin to show, I can show something like this diagram like this. This looks very good, you know, it's not, but now begin to write all these, supremum, difficult, and all that, and I don't need that. They don't need it. You understand? I only give them what they need. I quantify. They want to know how many are going to die. When they know that they themselves will die, and then if they don't send the treatment that other president, if you don't give us money for the 2 days, you're also going to die. And then if you don't give money for vaccination, that's what you want to hear. So how much? When I finish, you come and meet me, okay? How much do I need so that all of us will not die? Then we sit down and talk. Do you understand me? So if I come here, if I come to them and I need to say, if there exists,
Epsilon greater than zero.
such that. Ah. So they say, okay, when you finish and you want to talk to us, you let us go. They will want to be sleeping. Are you getting now? So you have to look at which routes you want to go, depending on your audience and your customer. Now, if the customer that comes to me today is from the industry, you want to get the quantitative, I give him. So in the counter, we have both. We have the quantitative, we have the pure maths, and we have the quantitative. So we use parameter estimation, we use data to convince what is going on. I think that's the idea. So you must understand your audience. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for the lecture. I have just a few questions to add. Sorry. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, sir. Okay, based on the heterogeneity, which gives a better representation, is it the analytical or the computational? And this issue of heterogeneity can never be solved, and to what extent can it be literally solved? Like if an attempt is to be made, including heterogeneity in our models.
So now, when it comes to heterogeneous model, there are different forms. You understand? Which will be showing depending on what you want to look at. But now I have said something initially that it's not about the computational rigor, the mathematical rigor. You understand? It's about like the reasoning, what you have, the result, the implication of what you are doing in terms of the public health and all that, which is what is going to say. Now, the other aspect of maths that will do. Now, I cannot stand here and say, oh, if you use this, if you see this heterogeneity, you'll be able to solve it. I cannot completely say that because these are very, very random stuff and they can, a lot of things can go on. But I have said something like if you are developing a model, you should know why you are developing that model and what do you want to do. If you are trying to achieve a master's program and you are going that direction, and there is a need for you to now you want to do mathematical analysis, use the pure maths, Now, there could be things at times, especially when the analysis is becoming very difficult. Now, you are eating a rock, yeah, right? You are eating a rock. What do you do to relax, constrain? Just like optimization. So, a particular problem must also be an optimizer. Are you getting what I'm saying now? It must be an optimizer because you are trying to solve a particular or analyze a particular model because the model is complex. So, what do? You have to think, how can I use this to be able to achieve my maths? Then when I achieve my maths finish, I can fall back and use the complexity and switch to my quantitative to bring it in real nature. So I do the maths by relaxing some constraint. Then I do the quantitative by bringing the constraint.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, ask this question. I think that we'll have more interesting days ahead of us as we go. Tomorrow is another day, and day after tomorrow is another time. Now we're going to be looking at some of this is practically as we evolve from mathematics to from real world to mathematics and back to real world. So on that note, I want to appreciate Prof for that research delivery and in general all our facilitators who have given their time and energy to give us this kind of beautiful lectures that we have enjoyed. Thank you so much, everyone. Tomorrow is another time. Please come early, 10 a.m. is the time. Arrive early so that we can get as much as possible. Yeah, I believe that if we arrive early, lectures can start on time and then we get so much. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Everybody on purple, please, we are going to take some snapshot. Purple snapshot. So if you are not on purple, you need to go and get purple. You need to go and become purple.
No,
Is a purple day. Wednesday is purple day at the
I
countdown.
can't everything low.
Okay, you see now,
Like
there is
5
a blue. We have some blues.